in very difficult circumstances, in number 10, in the Cabinet Office, night and day. And I believe that what we were doing was in conformity with the COVID regulation. So that is why I said what I said in Parliament.
Well, Boris Johnson's also questioned whether Sue Gray, who investigated the Partygate scandal last year, may have had a political axe to grind. The senior civil servant, who's been appointed Sir Keir Starmer's new chief of staff, found widespread rule-breaking took place in government buildings, and Mr Johnson was fined by police. He says he would have queried Sue Gray's independence before appointing her to Partygate if he'd known she'd join Labour. A huge shift in the government's position over pay has averted major ambulance strikes due to take place next week. Tens of thousands of staff in England and Wales were scheduled to walk out on Monday and Wednesday. Unison and GMB say they've been assured there's additional money for pay rises outside the current budget. However, 3,000 members of Unite, the smallest ambulance union, will walk out on Monday after rejecting the offer of talks. Teachers in Scotland are set to suspend their planned strikes after an improved offer, which amounts to a pay rise of 14.6% over 28 months. Unions have recommended their members accept what the Scottish Government's called the largest pay package in over 20 years. Constance Martin and Mark Gordon have been remanded in custody after the remains of a baby were found on Wednesday. The pair were charged with manslaughter, concealing the birth of a child and perverting the course of justice. The remains of the baby, named in court documents as Victoria, were found in a shed in Brighton following a major search. The pair will appear at the Old Bailey at the end of the month. Disgraced American lawyer Alex Murdaugh has been sentenced to life in prison without parole for murdering his wife and son. The jury took less than 3 hours on Thursday to convict Murdaugh after a 6-week trial. He stole nearly £7.5 million from clients to fund his drug addiction and lifestyle. And the US President Joe Biden's been given a clean bill of health after having surgery to remove cancer cells last month. The White House has confirmed a lesion taken out of his chest was a common form of skin cancer and no further treatment will be required. Mr Biden's expected to launch a bid for re-election in the coming weeks. TV online and DAB Plus Radio. This is GB News. Now it's time for headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, the nation's favourite newspaper review show. I'm Nick Dixon and I'm joined by Josh Howie, a man who doesn't eat pork, and Lewis Schaefer, who doesn't eat anything cooked, which means a single cooked pork chop can take them both out. And I've got one on the desk just in case they get out of control. So how's it going? Did you watch last night, Josh? There was a lot of lipid panel action from Lewis.
Yeah, I heard that. Well, I've deliberately put my chair at this level so it's covering my gut.
Good.
Just so Lewis doesn't get into me.
Well, yeah. You mentioned that, and now I'm going to have to mention it because there's a demand. Who am I going to call fat on the show? And I've got two people.
This is it.
Yeah.
He's more than me.
Well, either of us, basically. All right.
And everybody is watching, probably, at least half the audience.
All right, Lewis taking over the show already. Let's have a look at tomorrow's front pages and start with the Daily Mail. So they've gone with Boris. Not a shred of evidence I misled MPs. Now, the Telegraph has Hancock's battle with Sunak over COVID rules. The Guardian has Partygate, fresh evidence that Johnson misled MPs, kind of the opposite of the Mail. And the Mirror has parties he knew because he was there. The Express, Boris blasts Partygate probe as cynical stitch-up. And the Star, Pinocchio is a fibber, whatever that means. And those were the front pages. All right, so there's obviously one massive story tonight, Josh. Let's start with The Guardian.
Yeah, well, this is very disappointing, and I don't think anybody saw this coming, but it turns out Boris Johnson, our ex-Prime Minister, it turns out he lied. I mean...
Lied?
I know.
Misled the nation.
The leader of our country, at the time, he might have done some fibbing and stuff like that, and I'm a little bit shocked. This is the headline. Partygate, fresh evidence that Johnson misled MPs. This is unbelievable. There's significant evidence. This is found in this 23-page report. It's a cross-party committee found that, he misled MPs over lockdown parties, and his aides and him almost certainly knew at the time that they were breaking the rules, which, of course, he has very clearly said many times, no, including in Parliament itself, in the House of Commons, and because of that, there could be serious ramifications.
Yeah, and there were these very questionable messages from Jack Doyle sort of saying, more or less, how can I spin this? This is really bad. What can we do? Yeah, and although I do have some sympathy, I'm going to put the pro-Boris side, Lewis, which is that, I mean, he in these WhatsApp messages that have been released, the lockdown files, the 100,000 messages from Hancock et al., he actually comes across slightly better than others. He comes across as not really wanting to do the lockdowns, doing them anyway, which isn't great, but he comes across not as bad as Hancock.
Yeah, but I think that makes it worse. Like, it's more cynical.
Right.
He knew the reality of the fact that what was actually going to make an impact and what wasn't, and made the political decision as opposed to being brave and strong as our leader of our country and making the right call for our country.
Yes, there's definitely an argument for that. What do you think, Lewis? Do you care about Partygate?
Not at all. And we knew that it was sick. Or something, whatever that is, the University of whatever the thing was.
You still reading stuff on Facebook?
Yeah, and where he was doing his, I don't know if I could say these words, doing his girlfriend from East Dulwich coming on in to, I think it was East Dulwich, coming on in while there was a total lockdown and he's telling everybody they're going to die. So Boris Johnson going to this party while he's telling everybody that he's going to die either means, one, that he was lying to the people, that people weren't going to die, or it meant that he didn't care that people died.
Well, people did die, but when you got a photo like this when we were in lockdown, and you got a bunch of people standing around empty bottles of alcohol.
Faces blurred out.
Yeah, faces blurred out, except for him.
Except Boris, because it's a bit hard. You know, that hair is a giveaway, even blurred.
Well, we saw the clip before of him on the news. I mean, I've never seen his hair. We've seen his hair in various dishevelled states.
It was next level. It was
this
like a distraction.
A whole other thing.
Look up here.
Yeah. I'm telling the truth.
What about the Mail? Because the Mail is a slightly different. This is quite comical. The Guardian, fresh evidence that Johnson misled MPs. Daily Mail, not a shred of evidence that Boris misled MPs. I mean, it's like they've seen the Guardian, so they've just copied their homework and just switched it. What do you think, Lewis? I mean,
well, it's just the Daily Mail is, you know, you got to respect Boris Johnson because he's fronting it. He's saying nothing to see here, and everybody knows there's something to see. But what does it matter? We know they were lying. Boris Johnson is lying now by saying he didn't know. Everybody knows he knew. Everybody knows everybody knows. It's time for us to just come clean and admit that I was totally, I knew this was
do you know what bothers
garbage.
me, Lewis? This Partygate thing is trivial compared to the lockdown files. I mean, it's annoying, but the bigger story is that they just were ignoring science. They were just doing what was politically expedient. And yeah, of course they were having parties because they knew it was all nonsense.
Yeah.
But the bigger story to me is still that they did these lockdowns when they should never have done them. And I've always thought that Partygate is a bit of a distraction because it's like they didn't follow their own rules, which is annoying, but we shouldn't have had the rules.
Well, I guess
here is the bigger story. Sorry.
Okay, no, please.
Okay, here's the bigger story. The story about this country, which is a fantastic country, but its political system is substandard.
Okay,
that is the bigger. That is the bigger. Am I allowed to say that?
Of course you can say it.
That because behind closed doors, there's shenanigans going on that no one knew. It wasn't open to discussion. If it had been open.
Well, the other thing that bothers me is this Sue Gray now being hired by Labour. Unless, I've got a little theory, unless it's 4D chess by Johnson, he tells her to join Labour, so it discredits her report. That would be genius, wouldn't it? That's pure satire.
Another conspiracy or whatever. She's dealing with actual facts. It's not like he's saying, oh, look at this report and none of this stuff happened. Already they've been fined by the police, so there's no contention as to the actual facts within the report.
Yeah, but it looks bad that she's joined Labour. But let's just quickly do the Times, because they've got this MPs could punish Johnson
Well, this is it. I mean, if he is banned from Commons for more than a month, and I'm trying to remember if this was the exact time. I don't know if you remember in Prime Minister PM question time, PMQs, when Starmer basically sort of said, so you're saying that you didn't know or you did know or whatever, and then Johnson said, I'm saying that I did not break the rules or whatever it was, and someone went, OK, cool, let's stop you there, we'll move on now. And it was like, by getting him to say that was enough to hang. He knew that at some point the truth would come out. Right, but that feels like the 4D chess stuff. Like, here we are, 2 years later or so, or a year and a bit later.
What is 4D chess?
It's a term that was popularised by Trump when he was outfoxing the media with like next level moves that they couldn't even understand. So it's 4D chess, like
4D. Oh, 4D chess.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, that was my English accent. You're in England now, Lewis.
Yeah.
But so now
I try to forget that.
Having sort of, he hasn't perjured himself as such because it's not a court of law, but but he has broke the rules of the House of Commons. He could be fined.
Although he says he hasn't. He says he never knowingly lied and thus wasn't in
But if it can be
contempt.
proved that he did knowingly lie and that he did know that the rules have been broken, as this report basically says it's almost certain that he did, then if he has found, then he's going to get, he has to sort of be banned for 30 days, and I think that means that he can be up for by-election.
All right, well, let's just do the Telegraph, because this is an infuriating story, actually. Who's got this one?
I have this one. And let me just point something out. How does he not know? He made the rules. He's the guy in charge of the rules. He set the rules. How does he not know?
It was Nicola Sturgeon who set the rules.
You're not supposed to. Well, it was something else. Well, this is the, basically, it's who's going to be a bigger scapegoat. Is it going to be Boris Johnson or is it going to be Hancock? And they're saying, according to the Daily Telegraph, which is the paper that I read the most, except for the Daily Mail, it's got a lot of news and it's for the money.
Yes, they've got Hancock battle with Sunak over COVID.
Yeah, and they were arguing behind the scenes. And if there was a free and open democracy, like there is more in America, not as much as there used to be, there would be different sides that would be coming out saying, I don't want this, I don't want this. But everybody's got to act in order. They have to act like a rugby team, all moving forward, whether we want to go there or not. And that's the problem. The problem is there were people, including Rishi Sunak, who seemed like he was against these things, and. You know.
Well, he could see firsthand what damage it was having to the economy.
Well, yeah, and he's one that had to stump up the money for it. So we always heard from the start that Sunak was more reluctant to do any of this. We heard that people like our very own Jacob Rees-Mogg was more reluctant. For some reason, Gove was very much a lockdown zealot. Cummings was a lockdown zealot. What really bothers me about this is that, whereas Sunak didn't want to because he had to pay for it all, and also perhaps because he had more conservative instincts. What Hancock is doing in these messages, which really annoys me, is he's making it sound like you're sort of far right if you didn't want to do lockdowns. He says things like it's conservative, pure conservative ideology. Later he says that Sunak is showing ankle to the hard right. What
do you think of his ankle?
It's absurd.
Has he got an ankle?
It's ridiculous. It's
whoa, Sunak!
I know, it's lame, but it's so annoying because it's like, yeah, you're the Conservative Party. There's a thing called civil liberties. Never mind conservatism. In England, we have civil liberties, and we wanted to do these lockdowns. Hancock didn't seem to care at all about the people. He cared about his own career. Someone even said within this, oh, this is great for your career. Basically, this pandemic could work out for your career. It's the kind of thing you might say as a joke in a WhatsApp message, but it didn't seem like they were joking. So this one's really annoying.
I want to see what happened. What else are in these WhatsApp messages? I want to see like some what porn they sent to each other, all the stuff that me and you sent to each other. I want to see
using the WhatsApp.
Yeah, I want to see what.
I did think about that. Like we're rightly having a go at Hancock, but how would you feel if 100,000 of your messages were released?
Well, what you
the stuff I say in public is bad enough.
Well, and then you trusted a good friend of yours.
I delete them because I don't trust you.
Well, you see, Nick sends me messages at like 3 in the morning and then immediately deletes them.
I let you see them.
Yes.
I don't trust the left.
Yeah. But you know what? You made a good point about Sue Gray. But the big point about Sue Gray is the fact that they hire one person to lead the report, like the Levinson report that they had, and it's total deniability, because when you have one person, no matter what happens, they can say, oh, look, the report was done, it's on our side, the report wasn't done, what do you expect? She's not with us. Well, that's what happens when you have one person.
Well, no one's actually contesting any of the stuff that's actually in the report.
Yeah, they should have consulted with you, Lewis. Yeah. All right, that's it for part one. That was good. But coming up, it's all kicking off in the Falklands again. Matt Hancock becomes even less popular somehow, and Sadiq Khan goes full Sadiq Khan. See you in 2.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Nick Dixon, Josh Howie, and of course the lipid king, Lewis Schaefer. That's his new nickname. If you didn't watch last night, you have no idea what that's about. But anyway, let's do the Telegraph, and good news for people who thought the Falklands War was a bit too short, Josh.
Don't cry for me, Argentina.
Don't make jokes. This is a serious issue.
Is it?
Yeah.
What was the accent? Because it's not... Madonna sung it in like an American accent, really, didn't she? It wasn't like that. You made it sound like a kind of Mexican person at a restaurant singing Happy Birthday.
So Argentina withdraws from agree to disagree pact over Falklands sovereignty. They're known in Spanish as Malvinas. Is that why they're known?
Malvinas.
Is it
Malvinas.
You pronounce the S?
Malvinas.
Malvinas.
Yeah. Malvinas.
Malvinas.
No, they're beautiful. They speak beautifully.
Malvinas. Okay. And
that was all racist. Carry on.
Was it racist?
It's that whole section.
It's about as racist as we can get away with nowadays. If we can't take the mickey out of the Argentinian,
then what do we have, John?
Come on, give me something.
We beat them.
And the Foreign Minister, Santiago Cafiero, he renewed demands for negotiations. So a couple of years ago, we did quite a good thing where we signed a thing saying, let's just agree to disagree. I think I've never heard of this, like, agree to disagree thing. That's a great little thing to sign.
Yeah.
And so because of that, they got to do some energy exploration. They get to find some bodies, which is sad, obviously. Let's move on. And but now it seems like Argentina is going to pull out of all of that. And then in response, our bloke texted back cleverly, James Cleverly, his UK counterpart, texted back, the Falkland Islands are British. And he did it.
Yeah,
it's repeated it many times.
Show of strength. But the only time I've heard agree to disagree is in Ron Burgundy, Anchorman, when he claims that San Diego means a whale's vagina. And she says, no, it means Saint Diego. He goes, agree to disagree. But anyway, now, Lewis, are we getting weaker? Not you, because you're American, but as a country, because they're testing the waters a bit. They've said, OK, we're going away from that agree to disagree. They're getting a bit aggressive. Cleverly's trying to stomp them down, but he's no Thatcher, is he?
No, and that we don't have the, I don't think this... I'd like to believe this country has the will if they invade it again, and I don't think that we British people have the will like Margaret
I'm worried
Thatcher.
You're right. I'm worried
you're right.
You
in the army or navy or anything.
I would love it. I would love it
British
because
one.
Any army, because they'd be disciplined. When left to my own devices, I'm out of control.
I think.
Okay.
I need control.
Well, you pretty much out of control the whole time. But let's move on and do the Mail. And it looks like we can add the police to the long list of people who are not happy with Matt Hancock, Lewis.
Well, it's funny because according to the Daily Mail, the police hit back at Matt Hancock that Matt Hancock, he was the health secretary at the time, caused huge resentment. The ex-chief constable says he wanted to get heavy with the police to enforce lockdown rules. And so the head of the Greater Manchester Police said, his name is Fahy, I think that's his name, he says he didn't know what was guidance from the government and what was legislation. And that struck me as completely incompetent on the police's part. Their job is to know what legislation is, what the law is,
yes,
and to know what guidance is. They shouldn't say, is this guidance? They should know, and they have their own lawyers to tell them.
Yeah, well, I suppose it was an unprecedented situation, to use that word we kept hearing. There's several things that are annoying. I mean, the police are annoyed because Hancock said the word plod. He said plod got their marching orders, as if you can just boss them around, and he called them plod.
He's such a badass, isn't he?
I know.
Although, get heavy with him.
I know, it's annoying. But then again, Josh, can the police really talk? Because they were doing so many terrible things during lockdown. They were taping up benches, they were arresting people walking along beaches alone, etc.
It was crazy. I mean, of course they are going to get mixed messages because they're going to be told one thing and then they're going to go for these meetings at number 10 and see all the leftover bottles left out and they go, oh, maybe actually it's not as strict as we thought. But I remember being in the park with, we were in a 3-bedroom flat, 5 kids. We went out, we don't have a garden, so we're in our local park, and the police coming over after 45 minutes. I had at that time, 2-year-old kid, baby, toddler, and they're coming over, how long you been out here? Oh, well, you better leave in about 10 minutes.
Pathetic.
In a boiling hot summer, it makes me really upset and angry when I think
in that same park, they put those little cones on the basketball. I keep talking about this, on the basketball nets, so the kids couldn't play basketball. I mean, how mean. You're outside, it's totally safe. It's a group of young kids who aren't susceptible really anyway, and you won't let them shoot a basket. You put a little cone over a basketball net. It drove me mad.
Why are we blaming the police? Why are we blaming Matt Hancock?
We're blaming both.
Here we go. And the thing that, because I wasn't here yesterday, and this hasn't come out since I've been on this, I want to blame, and I know we don't say mainstream media, we say legacy media, whatever, but I think the narrative that was constructed and how no one challenged it, and Labour, who didn't challenge it either, no one sort of actually stood up and went, wait a minute, this stuff is, I mean, people did individually.
Yeah, I did.
But the point is, our institutions failed us massively.
Yes, no. I think I think we failed ourselves. We, as a world, not even as a nation, because this was around the world, we accepted this. We thought something bad was going to happen. We believed it. So for us, every time we're going to do these stories in the future, I hate to say it, this is a non-story.
It's a massive story.
No, it isn't. It isn't the biggest story, because the fact is, every single person, except for you and me and Nick, and the people who are watching out there.
You're not running for president.
We were against it, but everybody else in this country, in this world, supported what the police were doing. They supported Matt Hancock.
The sheeple are to blame as well, Lewis. I totally agree, if that's your point.
Yes, everybody is to blame, and we have to accept we're to blame, and we forgive ourselves for following this craziness.
OK, fair point. Vote Lewis Schaefer. And let's stick with the Mail. The downside of committing crimes, Josh. There's a downside.
There is. Worried Sky streamers, the Sky TV, rip out their illegal fire sticks as officers raid homes. So, supposedly they raided someone's like a garage or something. They found about 50,000 computers with about 50,000 details. Now, these are these little fire sticks. They're legal, actually. The fire sticks are legal. You put them into your broadband or your TV. But what's illegal is the software that can allow then streaming from the paid services. And because of these details now being made public, now people are worried, those people who've paid for this stuff, for like £10 instead of £80,
What's frustrating is the police are good at this stuff, do you know what I mean? Like these minor things. I mean, it's one of those crimes you don't expect to be taken seriously, like downloading torrents or that body you left in the Everglades, Lewis. It's one of those things you don't expect to be taken. Any thoughts on this? We don't have to spend much time on this, but any thoughts?
Well, I thought it funny because it said that Sky, the company Sky, supports the police.
It's strange.
It's strange that they're supporting when they're going to make money off it.
But there is something serious here, because they're saying that this funds other crime. But actually, what they're not considering, like, i.e., they get money from this and then they use that to finance drugs. I think it's the other way around. I think that drug dealers are out there just trying to fund buying Sky.
You're probably right. It is very expensive these days. All right, let's do the Telegraph. And if you don't like Sadiq Khan, you must be far right, according to Sadiq Khan.
Yeah. Well, is this the Daily Mail?
Telegraph.
Telegraph. Sorry about that. Is it been a change in the numbering system?
Your limit's okay, Lewis. It's number 8.
Telegraph. Number 8. Yeah, I wrote the Daily Mail.
Sadiq Khan.
All right, so
London
I'm not super competent. You don't pay me to be competent. You pay me to wear a tie and to look good for a man my age. Anyway, so Sadiq Khan has a meeting in Ealing, People's Question Time, which gives the mayor, who's very titular, the mayor. He doesn't do as much as other mayors in other countries, but he does something. And he went to a meeting, and he was talking about the Ulez, which is the what is Ulez?
The basic
emissions.
The emissions, the low emissions, right? And he called people who were against making it expensive to drive because their car is not up to date, far-right COVID deniers, Tories, vaccine deniers.
That was the mad thing. He said that some are COVID deniers, some are far-right, some are COVID deniers, some are vaccine deniers, whatever that is, and some are Tories, like they're all one group together. It was absolutely appalling.
It was insulting, and I think the fact is that as the people know that vaccine deniers have some relevancy. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say, the vaccine was.
You don't want Matthew Sweet tweeting you.
No, I don't want Ofcom involved, and that the fact is that the COVID deniers also, there's lots of doubt about COVID.
What about Tory deniers?
Tories exist.
I'm so sick of this deniers. What does it even mean? The other day, Kay Burley said that Isabel Oakeshott was a known lockdown denier. That's a new one on me. What, you denying the lockdown happened? This is a new thing. So I hate this language. What do you think, Josh?
It's very frustrating because any particular instance of people disagreeing with, generally it's people on the left, then that's their comeback is the people disagreeing must be far right. So it's not just this Ulez stuff. We also had babies having like these drag people like shoving their groins in their face. Anybody who protests that, suddenly you're far right. As opposed to just a moral human being thinking this is wrong. What happened in Wakefield with this autistic 14-year-old being suspended? Oh, you must be far right if you think it's wrong that you have a bunch of essentially Islamists forcing through this policy for this school that they're the ones who are suspended, as opposed to, and the police supporting them, as opposed to looking into people who sent death threats. Suddenly that makes you far right.
I know.
Can you stick to one story?
No, but the point of it is that, and I'm part of the left, and it just frustrates me so much, and certainly also with the trans issues that we've seen, the gender ideology, is that when the left are abdicating their responsibility for talking about this stuff, you are leaving an open goal for other people to step into it. And it is incredibly annoying.
And it's so ridiculous because maybe it's changed since I grew up, but I don't recall the far right being mainly concerned about traffic tariffs. You know what I mean? It's such an absurd. Sadiq Khan has jumped the shark there. Let's quickly do the Mail, and it's good news for people who want to work till they drop dead, Josh.
Yeah, more than 5 million Britons retiring in the next 2 decades, set to be clobbered by inadequate pension pots. This is the Department for Work and Pensions revealing these figures today. And essentially, people aren't saving enough. The things that they're talking about now to help fix that, but it'll come into play, like it'll have an effect in like 2060, is essentially, instead of 22, you're actually going to start putting into the pension pot earlier at 18, and the idea is that that'll teach you to save. And also, can you imagine being 18 and you can't it's only now that I'm having a midlife crisis. Oh, I'm going to die soon.
Well, I've only just started getting a pension. I mean, self-employed people just have to eat what they kill. I mean, and it's tough for Lewis. He hasn't been able to retire. I mean, he didn't put enough in that pension. Anything to add, Lewis? Very concisely, really, we've got to go.
I don't understand pensions.
OK, brilliant, perfect. Classic Lewis. All right, that's part 2 in the bag. But coming up, an author censoring his own work, too much gammon at Glastonbury, and is the Pope Christian? Find out after the break.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's start with the Mirror. And Glastonbury is in trouble for its lack of diversity, presumably because it's all middle-class people with money to waste on music festivals, Lewis.
Yeah, exactly. And it costs £300 for a ticket, for like a weekend ticket. Yeah, they've raised the price of the whole thing. It's like super, super expensive.
Mental.
But at Glastonbury, they have all-male headliners, according to the Mirror. It's sparking a furious backlash, which I can't see what it is. Probably those people don't care. And the festival said they're trying their best. They say they have trouble getting female acts, and the headliners are Elton John, who's basically a woman. The Red Hot Chili Peppers are very feminized. And
you just out Elton John as trans, is that what?
Well, do you know what? If he came out today, he probably would be trans to get the attention.
Yeah, he's got a wig.
Yeah, back in the day, they used to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's what they're doing. And so the three headline, they're complaining. There are 55 acts, and 53% of them are male acts. And 47% of them have female acts. Yeah. So it's not exactly...
It should be completely equal. We need our music
100%.
Why am I a big gammon? I mean, why did diversity become such an obsession? Was
that a rhetorical question?
I mean, yeah. I mean, look, Glastonbury it comes from folk music, and then it's like indie. Tends to be probably more white people. Maybe they're men. Is it that important that it's perfectly diverse at Glastonbury?
Of course it is. It's really annoying. So Emily Evis, what she said is that the reason why is the industry has a pipeline problem. I would say a pipe problem myself. But this is ridiculous.
Well, explain what that is. Explain what pipeline problem is. Means.
Well, No, can I just move on to the next bit?
Because it's a phrase that
Do what Lewis says.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go on to the next bit here, which is what it says here. It says just 43% of acts are non-white or are groups that include non-white. Wait a minute. Just 43%. That's significantly over the 10% of this country who are people of colour. So that is ridiculous. Look, what about... crazy idea. Let's just hire the people that we think are going to be the best fit. Those acts, apart from Guns N' Roses, are great. You know,
you don't like them.
No, I'm not a big fan of Guns N' Roses.
Don't like Slash.
But Elton John, I mean, how lucky are you to get Elton John to perform at your festival? Next year, guess what? It turns out they've got 2 women headlining. Brilliant. OK, as long as they're the 2 best women, fantastic. What's the problem here? I mean, of course, the numbers will probably go down. But look, it's a great thing. I know. But why they need to complain is ridiculous.
Or if they have Lizzo perform, that's like 4 women.
Nice bit of body shaming, but it was quite amusing. Let's do the Times. And authors are beating sensitivity readers, I can say it, to the punch by ruining their own books in advance, Josh.
Yeah, Goosebumps author edits mentions of any weight and mental health, which would put you out of work.
I know.
You're too clean.
So, crazy has been changed to silly, so it's like I had a silly weekend. And also, instead of being plump, you have to say cheerful. So, Lewis has put on a bit of cheerful. He's got a bit cheerful.
Make me silly.
And someone's gone through their own books. One of them does make a bit more sense, where this book that was published in 1996, there's a character with dark brown eyes, a great warm smile. Lee is African-American, and he struts and acts real cool like the rappers on MTV videos. The kids today aren't going to know what MTV is. Sure.
Right, that's a good point.
So I can understand that one being taken...
Such an annoying trend, though, isn't it? We had Roald Dahl, we had Ian Fleming, and it tends to make the work always more bland. It always changes interesting phrasing and makes it more bland, and it's so... And now the fact that authors are doing it to themselves while alive, and you thought that after Roald Dahl, maybe this will stop, but it just carries on, it gets worse and worse, and Camilla can't stop them all. You know, she did that speech, and it kind of ended the Roald Dahl thing, or, you know, it made Penguin release the proper books. I mean, I don't know what we're going to do. I've had to go out and go onto eBay and get a racist copy of Live and Let Die. It's very hard to find them now. But
this is actually disgusting. Sorry, I just want to say one thing here. He changed. It says a thing here. A bald man in a bulging turtleneck sweater with at least 6 chins was changed to a bald man with at least who was at least 6 foot tall. Hello, excuse me. Bald man's okay, right? That's the one bit you're not going to change.
Right. And the height... Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Goosebumps.
Right. Well, let's go on then, because you're tiring. Let's move on to the Telegraph. And if you can't beat the deadly AI bots, just join them, Lewis.
Yeah, that's what this is. But let me just, before we start the show, I just want to say that I think both you...
Haven't started yet? Wait a minute.
When I'm starting, it's the show. Okay. But can I just say that you, Nick, and you, Josh, you both look dressed and lovely. Okay. And I love your jacket, and I love Nick's jacket.
And I said in the break that you were dressed well, didn't I?
You did, and it reminded me...
Is this because you haven't read the story?
I don't understand what ChatGPT is. It's basically saying... It's basically what Nick just said, which is the Telegraph reports that certain... school testing things are working with the government to allow them to accept using this AI chat box things, which basically writes the papers for you, right?
You sound like a chat GPT. You know what I mean? In that it sort of sounds like it should make sense, but doesn't.
There's content there, but it doesn't actually mean anything.
Yeah.
I have problems. I don't want to say anything bad about ChatGPT because I asked them to do a review of my show, and they said very complimentary things.
Oh, good. It's all fake. But let me do the actual boring work of explaining what the story's about. So they basically said that, you're going to be allowed to use ChatGPT. And what I thought was hilarious is that they said, as long as you clearly credit the program, it's just like, essay by ChatGPT, name and date by Nick. You know what I mean? Like, what do they mean?
Because it's very hard, as opposed to normally when they've been looking into whether people have been stealing their material online and you can sort of Google it and see if it comes up. This is actually very hard to see if they've been plagiarising. So the best way that they found to stop the cheating with the system is to just make it legal.
My school did that when I was...
drugs or something. It's like they're capitulating to...
But when my school did the same thing, they just said, listen, if you're going to have another student write your paper, just give him credit. Make sure you give him credit. And so when I wrote my paper, I said, this paper is written by Dave Silverberg. So thank you, Dave Silverberg, Bard College.
Let's stick with schools and do the Times. And another story about what I think we can now call Toiletgate, Josh. We've done so many of these.
School lavatory rules prompt copycat TikTok protests. So this is spreading now like a virus through the country. And children have just had enough of not being able to do wheeze.
Yeah, but, these stories are also...
And also take drugs in the...
Yes. and fight. But this always surprised me because when I went to school, it was sort of frowned upon to go to the loo. You went if you really had to. One person was allowed. You had to put your hand up. Now it seems they think it's such a human right that they're actually they were setting things on fire in one of these stories.
So you're genuinely thinking the snowflake generation with their
They've
toiletry...
gone too far. Yeah. Because they should... It's okay to go.
Toilet paper.
Well, it's just a different level of discipline. There was a different level of discipline there, whereas now the kids have taken over. And obviously, they're going too far the other way now, and they're trying to punish them too much. But look, come on, when we had the Empire, the Victorian age, kids were...
Well, look, I agree.
It was built on children going up chimneys.
It was totally... I was unable to go to the toilet at school. And let me just tell you how impressive that is. I went to boarding school.
Yeah.
So we're talking 6 days.
You're not winning over anybody watching this. You go to boarding.
Anything on this, Lewis? Did you go to school?
They know my
I went to school, and you know something. I seem to remember that they used to restrict people going to the bathroom, and they frowned on it. And because you wanted to go to the bathroom, you would do anything to get out of class. It was so horrible for me, at least. I mean, you guys were goody two shoes, but I was.
No, we weren't. But let's do The Independent. And Jordan Peterson has explained Christianity to the Pope.
Yeah, well, this is an amazing story. According to the Indy 100, which I'm not sure was that a website.
It's part of the Indy. It's
Independent
website. They tried to belittle Jordan Peterson because it said Jordan Peterson just tried to explain to the Pope how Christianity works because the Pope tweeted something about what social justice is, which I don't think social justice demands that we fight against the causes of poverty, inequality, and lack of labor. I'm no Christian, but I don't think social justice is mentioned in the New Testament. And number one, didn't Jesus say, "Render unto whatever Caesar"?
What is Caesar?
What is Caesar? So Jordan Peterson said, "Hey, you know, there's nothing Christian about social justice." So he said that. So this is the difference between Judaism, okay, and Christianity, at least Catholicism.
The way you tagged Josh,
I'm including you.
Against me.
Yeah. I'm including you. It's basically, they're saying the Pope knows it all. You can't question the Pope.
Well, I never thought I'd say this, Lewis, but you're right. Josh?
Well, I'm saying this is a way for The Independent to lay into Jordan Peterson. They also have some tweets where Jordan Peterson's complaining about a paper towel dispenser. And this is the journalist goes, "Oh, my God, can you imagine how it must be absolutely exhausting being Jordan Peterson because of this, being annoyed about pay." And I'm just thinking, imagine how exhausting it is writing for The Independent because you're getting worried about Jordan Peterson being exhausted about paper towel. And then I thought, do you know how exhausting it is to be a headliners panellist talking about an independent journalist who's getting upset about Jordan Peterson getting upset about the paper towel?
So it's a sort of meta level of petty.
It's gone to a whole new level.
It's a whole meta. It's a whole Jungian analysis.
You are.
Jungian archetypes.
Can I ask you? Would you stop talking while I'm talking? While I'm interrupting.
Sorry.
You know Christians, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And isn't it true that the Pope was against abortion, right, at one time? And that people did not like that. But nobody said...
And now he's pro-abortion.
Yeah, so he says abortion's wrong, and people said, hey...
And we've got the tweet there.
Yeah, the point is... I mean, Lewis is actually right. Like. Social justice is a left-wing idea. The Pope is basically espousing a sort of vaguely Marxist, neo-Marxist postmodernism. He's basically espousing a kind of leftist idea, and Jordan Peterson's saying that's not really what Christianity is about. And easy to mock, but we know the church has gone woke. We know the church has become politically, ideologically aligned with certain values that are not necessarily traditionally Christian. So actually, for all the independents moaning, Peterson is actually right. So anyway, that's it for that section. But coming up in the final part, Japanese gangsters, radioactive dogs, and trouble at the Vagina Museum. How can you miss that?
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to the final part of Headliners. Now, the Mirror has a story that's so horrific, I didn't even want to read it, I'll be honest, Josh, but go on.
Bungling surgeon amputates patient's penis by mistake over non-existent tumour. So, how do you feel about that now that you've heard it?
Well, I'm too squeamish to read it. I don't know why you put this in there. You wanted to do this story, so tell us why.
It's a really funny story.
It's not funny, is it? It's horrific.
It's funny.
It wouldn't be funny if it was a different...
It's pretty
a different gender, different body part. You think it's because it's a man, you think it's funny?
He's 60s. He's, how much use... I mean, how old are you?
Don't fall for that, Lewis.
You're not doing stuff anymore.
Can we
You're not using it.
Can we move on from this story?
All right, well, OK, the only thing I will say of it is it said a similar case was reported earlier this year, and then it tells a totally different case where someone was... They didn't find what actually turned out to be a terrible thing with their willy. So I don't know why they did that. Anyway, I think this is a good story. Like, don't you? People want to hear about wrongly amputated willies.
People either trying to get to sleep or at 5 a.m. in the morning eating their breakfast.
They're waking up.
They're eating their breakfast and they're like, why are they covering this? I fought against it, guys. I just want to say to our viewing public, but I was overruled. I don't have the power that an Andrew Doyle has.
Can I point out that I am totally against doctors and nurses, and I think we could do, if we had like 90% fewer nurses and doctors.
OK, well, can I point out, would you get your willy chopped off if it could give you an extra 5 years of life?
Nah.
Instead of 1 year of life?
No.
No.
You wouldn't? To get extra 5 years?
No. Who wants that extra 5 years when you're old at the end? No, I don't think so.
Or what about now?
Is this an offer? I don't know where you're going with this, Josh. I don't like it.
OK, all right.
I could have it nibbled off. That might...
I was shocked by Lewis's... not shocked, because I know what he's like, but his anti-doctor stance. Then again, Lewis is a blood pressure truther. He doesn't believe in blood pressure, so...
What people have to understand is that Lewis comes in with medical kits and literally tests our blood before the show.
Yeah, I think everyone's aware of that now.
I'm bringing people health.
Yes, you're doing great work, Lewis. Now, let's do the Mail. And it turns out the Vagina Museum might not be the serious institution we all thought it was, Lewis.
Oh, I thought it was Virginia Museum.
That's a terrible error.
That was a joke.
It was a joke. You should always tell people after your jokes, Lewis, in case we don't know.
You can't find either.
But I didn't expect you to mention the word vagina in the thing. Well, there's a museum of vaginas
They're both in the south. Carry on.
Which, according to the Daily Mail...
Sorry.
There was a woke, gender-neutral crash course in ovarian cancer, which they filed the NHS rules, which is you shouldn't say that a woman should be tested, that it's people who have ovaries.
Yeah, they said, while most people who get ovarian cancer are women, they said, it can affect anyone with ovaries, including trans men, non-binary people and intersex people who have ovaries. Very frustrating, and we're still doing this rubbish.
And can I just say this? Can I say my few jokes?
Yes. Go.
That it's interesting because men can't find this museum.
Okay, that's good.
They can't get access to the museum.
I've heard that one.
Josh did that one 10 seconds ago.
Nor did they stay long enough in the museum.
Oh, that's good. Okay, that's not bad. Yeah. Isn't it mad that this is still going on? I mean, the other day, Peter Tatchell apologised.
I actually couldn't fit in.
Just interrupt the host, doesn't matter. All right, Josh, very quickly, do you have anything on this, or should we move on?
No, I just said my funny joke.
You've said all your jokes, OK. And then Lewis says them 30 seconds later.
There is
it's a great
something here,
show.
because you still got the website. It's still... finally, the NHS has been advised to start putting the word women back into their website and stuff, and it's a real problem when they're trying to treat people who English isn't their first language, and they're saying, go and get your ovarian test if you menstruate or whatever, and people are not doing it.
Yeah, it's very frustrating that this kind of thing carries on. Anyway, let's do the Metro. And last night we were talking about the body mass index. Tonight it's the body count index,
Indeed.
Josh.
This is the number of sexual partners the average Brit has had. Who uses the word Brit anymore? Do you use Brit? Anyway, whatever. Anyway, you want to know the answer? We got there. 4. And they say here it's average of 5 for men, 3 for women. This is after asking a couple of thousand people. What that really means, it's not 5 for men and 3 for women. What it really means is it's probably 3 for men and about 8 for women.
yeah. Men exaggerate, women lower it.
Because women, right, exactly.
We all agree on that. We're all making the same massage at this point. Yeah. But I can't really win this one because the trad... If I say it's too high, the trad Christian base that I have will attack me. If I say it's too low, the men will be like, oh, he's a loser, incel.
What are you? Are you a Chad or an incel or what? How many do you see?
A total Chad, yeah.
That's
what, this week?
Chad for
Lewis, any comment on this? I'm sure you've got something.
Well, the numbers are skewed, basically, because you know that the people who are really old, right, have had it's a very weird number because Louis Schaefer was I'm not going to say what I did because I want to keep an air of mystery
and also legal reasons.
There's no mystery. We know your little blood count. We know
how many times did you visit the Vagina Museum?
By the way, this says that 40 to 59-year-olds are the age group who had the most sex. So sorry, Lewis, you're a bit too old.
A bit too old, but they were good times back then.
All right, that sounds like that's Lewis's final comment. Sorry,
I can't talk about it.
This article is in the Metro, and the Metro is quite I hate using the word, a woke newspaper somewhat, and it goes very much at pains to be continually stressing that there's no right or wrong answer.
Oh, yeah.
And it's OK if you haven't said... And it's worth highlighting that virginity itself is a concept.
A concept,
What are you talking about?
What's that about? I know. That was mental.
I'm a virgin, so...
Yeah, it's all a concept. So let's do the I and a recruitment problem for Japanese gangsters, Lewis.
Do the accent.
No, I'm going to pretend that I'm a Japanese guy. You don't do accents if you're the real thing. Anyway, this was of all the stories we've read. I've been here many times.
And you read about half of them.
Yeah, because they're so boring. This is the first story that I thought, Jesus.
They're all non-stories.
They're all non-stories. This is also a non-story because it involves a group of criminals in Japan who are going out of business.
Yeah.
And but it's really interesting. I knew nothing about it. It's the Yakuza. Those
shocks me.
In Japan, why the once glamorous gangsters are struggling to entice new recruits. And I learned a lot about this. There used to be 70,000. It's down to 28,000. It's kind of like the same numbers as the Hasids in this country.
Well, good there, Lewis. What
was amazing to me, it seems so sort of Japanese and so brilliant, is that they had offices. It was all totally out in the open. Yeah, and they could just work. But then the problem is they've cracked down on the regulations. Now they can't make a living anymore. Plus their fingers are cut off.
Yeah.
Which is what we're going to do to you, Lewis, if you swear again on the show. They cut part of your finger off as a sort of penance. They've got tattoos so everyone can know it's them, and they can't get work. Well, they've got work, but they can't find a place to live.
And they have to pay to be a member.
Yeah,
I didn't realise you had to pay to be a member of the...
And now they can't afford the membership because they're not doing well enough in crime.
But the shocking thing is that most of their businesses are totally legitimate. Mostly they're like criminals with legitimate businesses, and they can't be doing it. They have a formal membership. You're enjoyed. The name is registered with the government. Every single person is registered.
That's Japan for you. Is that racist to say that?
They're very organised.
No, they're great. Josh, do you want to comment on this one?
And you can't quit.
Or would you rather do radioactive dogs?
Here we go. Loser, but Yakuza means losers. It's the worst possible hand in a game of cards. So that's why they're called Yakuza, which is 893.
Wasn't this an most interesting story? Wasn't it really?
No, I liked the Glastonbury one.
Are you adding a section to the show at the end of this where you review the stories we've done
museum?
and which ones were good enough for you?
You know what? These are things that are in the mainstream media. They're, you have to evaluate
You're
them.
the mainstream media now, aren't you? You're getting recognised on the street.
I do, yeah. And they come and sit next to me on the train. I got to sit there, or I got to get out at the next stop and pretend that's my stop and just go wait for the next
Lewis
train.
is at Buckingham Palace.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, great show. Thanks, guys. I thought it was a really good one. So show's pretty much over, but let's have another quick look at Saturday's front pages. So, the Daily Mail has Boris, not a shred of evidence I misled MPs. The Telegraph, Hancock's battle with Sunak over COVID rules. The Guardian goes with Partygate, fresh evidence that Boris misled MPs. The Mirror, parties he knew because he was there. And the Express has Boris blasts Partygate probe as cynical stitch-up. And the Star goes with Pinocchio is a fibber. And I'm still not totally sure what that's about. So that's pretty much our show. Thanks to Josh and Lewis. I thought it was a fun show. I'll be back again tomorrow, unless some sort of email comes from HR. I think it'll be Lewis and Cressida. So join us at 11 p.m, or if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, then stick around for breakfast next. But for me, it's good night or good morning, depending when you're watching.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604. Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, girls and boys. It's 7 o'clock and I'm Lawrence Fox. Boy, do we have an Ofcom compliant show for you tonight. Coming up, the lockdown files have dropped, but are they all a damp squib? Should we have locked the country down at all? These explosive revelations suggest the government might not have always followed the science when deciding to confine us in our homes. I'm joined by NHS GP Dr. David Lloyd to discuss this. Then, London Mayor Sadiq Turpin, has branded Ulez opponents far-right, COVID deniers and Tories. But with only one death, tragic death, caused by pollution in London over the last 20 years, has Sadiq gone a little bit too far again? Plus, for Dish It Out, I'll be speaking to Femi Nylander, actor and writer, about everything from statues to slavery and the dreadful empire. And don't forget, perhaps most importantly of all, I want to hear from you. So send your views my way, gbviews@gbnews.uk. That's all coming up after the headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Hello there, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Boris Johnson may have misled the House of Commons at least 4 times, according to MPs investigating his conduct over Partygate. The Commons Privileges Committee says breaches of coronavirus rules in Downing Street would have been obvious to Mr Johnson at the time. The former Prime Minister repeatedly denied rules were broken at Number 10 when asked about that in the Commons. He says it was his belief all guidance had been followed.
The reason there's no evidence to show that I must have known or I must have believed that illegal events were taking place is because I didn't. And I thought we were fighting COVID to the best of our ability in very difficult circumstances in Number 10, in the Cabinet Office, night and day. And I believe that what we were doing was in conformity with the COVID regulation. So that is why I said what I said in Parliament.
Well, Boris Johnson says he would have queried Sue Gray's independence before appointing her to investigate Partygate if he'd known she'd join Labour. The senior civil servant, who's been appointed Sir Keir Starmer's new Chief of Staff, found widespread rule-breaking had taken place in government buildings, and Mr Johnson was fined by police. Labour say Boris Johnson's using the appointment to vindicate himself after he was ousted over a series of scandals. Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg has called for a proper inquiry into the appointment. Major ambulance strikes in England and Wales have been called off after what unions have described as a huge shift in the government's position. Tens of thousands of key workers in England had been due to walk out on Monday and Wednesday next week. Unison and GMB have suspended industrial action, though, following agreement by ministers to reopen pay talks for this and next financial year. Strikes in Wales and Scotland have also been paused for talks with their respective governments. Meanwhile, teachers in Scotland have received a new pay offer. The proposal is offering a 7% pay rise backdated to April last year. That's a further, and also a further 5% from this April and another 2% from next year. The Educational Institute of Scotland plans 20 days of rolling strikes targeting every local authority north of the border between March and April. Constance Martin and Mark Gordon have been remanded in custody after the remains of a baby were found on Wednesday. The pair were charged with manslaughter, concealing the birth of a child and perverting the course of justice at Crawley Magistrates Court. The remains of the baby, named in court documents as Victoria, were found in a shed in Brighton following a major search, and the pair will appear at the Old Bailey at the end of the month. TV online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News, but now it's back to Lawrence.
One thing which remains true, even in uncertain times, is that human beings have far more in common than we give ourselves credit for. From saints to serial killers, all of humanity is on an unending search for meaning. What is our individual place among the 7 billion companions we share this planet with? Who knows? Some turn to God to complete the circle in anticipation of retribution or salvation once they have shuffled off this mortal coil. They live their lives with one eye on what dreams may come in that eternal sleep. For others, it is simply to die, to sleep no more.
A life of 80 years and 10. They take the world as it is, and for better or worse, they seize the day in the knowledge there is no ever after. And then, in the middle, is every other iteration of humanity, each unique and individual take on our shared existence. Our uniqueness is our greatest strength, and yet also, it is our gravest enemy. Since it has become plainly obvious that Nietzsche was right, God is dead, and we have killed him, a great deal of the killing done by the church itself, ironically, something else was sorely needed to replace the space formerly occupied by the Almighty. A new and man-made religion was required to fill the vacuum which nature so abhors. So mankind decided to devote himself to kindness at any cost, even at the cost of kindness itself. First came the elevation of normal, regular conversation and political discourse into the sphere of fundamentalist religious extremism. What was formerly acceptable disagreement on the grounds of critical thinking for the benefit of free expression has become the new heresy. Skepticism of any kind, be it over the climate, lockdowns, injections, woman face or race, is immediately stamped with the judgment of denial and allegations of far-right extremism. Powerful stuff. Climate deniers, lockdown deniers, vaccine deniers, as Sadiq Khan called people this week. How can you deny a vaccine? Common sense itself is now a far-right conspiracy theory, as our good friend Sadiq reminded us this week, to mixed reviews.
There are objections in 2006 when we banned smoking from public places, and there are objections now. What I find unacceptable, though, is some of those who've got legitimate objections joining hands with some of those outside who are part of a far-right group who are... Some of those outside... Some of those, let's be frank, let's call a spade a spade. Some of those outside are part of the far right. Some are COVID deniers. Some are vaccine deniers, and some are Tories.
Oh, I could watch it all day. What a charming, if thin-skinned chap, thick-skinned even, chap this progressive is. There are positives, though. The new religion is very inclusive and diverse and easy to feel part of, as adherence demands no meaningful interaction with the truth whatsoever. Quite the contrary. In fact, the only thing a disciple of the new religion really needs to sign up to is the doctrines and signal them virtuously on unending repeat, whilst calling anyone who doesn't do the same a far-right, bigoted, fascist, climate-denying, anti-vax conspiracy theorist. Simples. They aren't even hindered by having to adhere to the very doctrines they preach, as the climate crisis doomsday cultist globe-trotting from conference to conference in their private jets so consistently and irritatingly prove. The same is true of the lockdown fanatics, those in the regime, the opposition to the regime, and the media who push so virtuously for longer and harder lockdowns have had to do something deeply unfamiliar this week. It's called soul-searching. Rapidly reverse ferreting on some of their more extreme positions, and the truth slowly looming into view. Matthew Hancock, in his infinite wisdom, decided to share 2.3 million words of WhatsApp communications with a journalist who isn't particularly famous for keeping confidences. One would have thought that breaking such a large story would have the media in conniption fits, but as it is, the completely impartial and not in any way political hacks on the Today programme, rather than patting Miss Oakeshott on the back for this mega data dump of ministerial stupidity, decided instead to shoot the messenger. Nick Robinson attempted to hastily assemble something resembling dignity and a conscience, and chose to take a pop at Isabel's betrayal of Matthew ahead of Matthew's betrayal of our entire country. Forgive me for finding none of this particularly interesting. You see, us far too right, far too often extremists who managed to hold on to a morsel of critical thinking during the persistent Chinification of Britain in these past years knew that this day would come. The slow and carefully managed reveal. The slow awakening from the dream of the extremely deadly virus. The plot had too many holes, you see, and now all of us must stare in cold wonder at the sheer enormity of the calamity. And those of us who by dint of birth were born with curious and sceptical minds, so reviled and persecuted in this time of the new religion, watch this stage-managed reveal with a sense of foreboding. The foundations of a narrative are being set. They will have to confess to the cock-up, but will they confess to what the cock-up covers up? I'm not holding my breath. It's going to take more than a few million leaked WhatsApps to wake people up. So where does this leave us? That is the question. Matthew's off to QVC or somewhere similar, that much is clear. But what about the broader picture? This oddly coincidental cock-up, which just happened to accidentally take place all around the world at exactly the same time. The merest mention of a possible drive towards one world government these days is instantaneously shut down with the ever-lazy allegation of anti-Semitism. New dog, same tricks. What about the preventable deaths? The excess deaths. Why was drug repurposing shut down so severely? What about midazolam, Matthew? What about the vaccination of children, pregnant women, and the healthy? What about exercise? What about vitamin bloody D, for crying out loud? The truth dies in darkness, and these WhatsApps do not bring us any closer to the light. So I, for one, will not be applauding Act 2 of this so far predictable tragedy until the entire truth, in all its uncomfortable ugliness, is laid out for all to see. There must be no stone left unturned, no alleyway of inquiry cordoned off to spare the blushes. There must be a full, open and honest inquiry about this, the darkest time in human history. But already, the voices asking for that debate are under fire again, slandered and ridiculed despite the fact that time upon time they have been proved right. Far too right. Far too often to be ignored. If we do not learn from history, we're destined to repeat it. Free speech, thought and inquiry is the vaccine to prevent future infection. But free speech is the only thing this new religion will not and cannot tolerate. Well, joining me to discuss this is NHS GP Dr. David Lloyd. Good evening, David. Was the COVID lockdowns an experiment in the battery farming of humanity?
Well, I need to give you a health warning here, Lawrence. I'm afraid I am at the other end of the spectrum from where you're coming. I believe that the lockdowns were an entirely good thing. I think the evidence is overwhelming, and if you'll give me the chance, I will go through some of the scientific data that we've got so far on the effects of lockdown and what it's done to save lives. So well, that's where I'm coming from.
I appreciate that we are at different places on our journey through life, but yes. Rather than examining data, would you say that your access to the data and your thinking about data was affected by your age?
No, I don't think so. For the 2 years of COVID, I had a very privileged life in that, unlike everybody else who was stuck in lockdown, I was locked down here in this clinic looking after patients who had COVID. I was running the local COVID hub. And the first thing we thought about was caring for our patients in this terrible disease. My age didn't come into it, really. I've caught COVID twice and I've had no problem.
Do you think the government ignored the science in regards to the second lockdown particularly?
I think I'm afraid if we start dissecting out the individual lockdowns, I won't have the evidence. I think we got the first bit right, the first bit wrong, and I think we got the second bit right. I think by some extraordinary collection of different things, we've managed to steer a course so that our population as a whole now has a large amount of resistance to COVID. And we did, on the second lockdown, perhaps overdo it, but on the first lockdown, we were too late. So I think we lost a lot of lives at the beginning, and I think we've managed to get it just about right now, whereas China has got it slightly wrong. But I think the evidence is overwhelming that the countries that did lockdown early saved many more lives than we did.
And what do you make of the suppression? You know, as we see these WhatsApps reveal themselves, do you think that we're being given a narrative? What do you make of the suppression of alternative treatments, of repurposed drugs and things like this?
Well, you know far more about this than I'm afraid. I'm afraid the Telegraph is on the side of a paywall, and I don't think I want to burden my life with a right-wing journal. But it's not in the Telegraph. WhatsApps are very revealing in terms of the discussions that were had. But the data is absolutely clear that we got some things very right. The vaccines, which again I noticed that you're a little hesitant about. The vaccines saved millions of lives. Lockdown saved millions of lives. And what's so fascinating, of course, is that some of the data comes from very political sources. If you look at Democratic states in the United States and Republican states in the United States, which had very different attitudes to lockdown and mask wearing, for instance, you'll find that the death toll in the Republican states was 38% higher than those in the Democratic states. So we've actually got data, not only in science, but in politics, that shows us...
But they didn't destroy their economies in the process. And, you know, the thing that I don't enjoy about the COVID